everyone, it's Nina Collins, and I'm here today with Claire. Do you pronounce it Luchette? Luchette?
It's Luchetti, but I've grown accustomed to any kind of pronunciation.
All right, yeah, I'm glad to know. Claire Luchetti, who is the author of this novel that is just out today called Agatha of Little Neon by Claire Luchetti. And I absolutely loved this book. I read The Galley months ago and immediately wrote to, I guess it's FSG, right? And was like, please, 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 can I interview Claire? And then it turned out that you knew my mom's work a little bit. We had some overlap on Instagram or something about my mom's work. So,
yes.
All right, so first I'm just going to read a little bio about Claire. So Claire has published work in the Virginia Quarterly Review, the Kenyon Review, Ploughshares, and Granta. She's a 2020 National Endowment for the Arts Fellow. She graduated from the University of Oregon MFA program and has received grants and scholarships from super prestigious places like MacDowell, Yaddo, the Millay Colony for the Arts, Lighthouse Works, the Elizabeth George Foundation, and the James Merrill House. And because I worked in book publishing for years, I know how prestigious all that is. And this book was published by Farrar Straus, which is, of course, also one of the most prestigious publishers around. And it's your first novel, so it's a huge accomplishment.
Yes, thank you. I'm psyched. Yeah, I've been really just, it's like the best kind of birthday because you actually feel like you've earned something.
Yeah, and
you've
really
done something. Yeah.
So where are you? Where are you right now? Where do you live?
Funny story. I am in a Hampton Inn and Suites in suburban Chicago. On Saturday, I tested positive for COVID, despite being vaccinated. So I'm isolating here for 10 days.
Oh my God, you're so not alone. I mean, I feel like this morning my boyfriend's mother has COVID. She's 90. She was vaccinated. Like, I've heard a few other stories this morning. Are you feeling okay?
Yeah, I feel totally fine. I just wanted to get a test to make sure, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. So you've had to, so you're quarantining.
Yes.
Funny story, Hampton Inns, when my kids were younger, my kids are all in their 20s now, but I used to go to a lot of like hockey tournaments and gymnastics tournaments. And I actually started the precursor of the Wolfer was a group called What Would Virginia Woolf Do? That I started as a Facebook group from a Hampton Inn in Minnesota when I was there.
Great things happen at Hampton Inns.
Great things happen at Hampton Inns. I like Hampton Inns.
Yes.
All right, so everyone, this book is about 4 nuns. And I was actually looking it up online and I noticed that somewhere on like Google Books or something, it was listed under the genre of religious fiction, which made me laugh. Like, that's silly. It's not really religious fiction. It's really like someone else said somewhere online, and it's true that it reads a little bit like an indie film. Has it been optioned for film yet?
No. And in fact, several people have told me this is not an obvious film choice.
It's not, but I have to say, I was an agent for many years and I was a film scout before that. And I bet this book will be optioned. I really do. I think it's, so it's about these 4 nuns who are around 30 years old and they're in an upstate, I don't know, what do you call it? Monastery? No.
Right. A convent.
They're in a convent, thank you, that runs out of money. And they have to leave they have this mother superior who they really love, and they get kind of shipped off, and correct me, Claire, if I'm remembering any of this, I read it months ago. They get shipped off to a halfway house in Rhode Island, where they're going to be in charge of a bunch of people who are struggling with drug recovery. And so there are 4 young nuns who are all super close friends and kind of do everything together. And you have these like funny images that have stuck with me of them like walking to the grocery store, like in the snow. I don't remember if they actually do that, but that's what it comes. They're in this car together. They're these 4, and it does feel a little bit like a funny, wonderfully charming, quirky indie movie. And then you've got all these interesting characters. You've got the mother superior. You've got the people in the halfway house. Agatha, who's kind of the smartest of the 4, ends up getting this job in Rhode Island. She gets shipped off to be, I think, a math teacher at the local high school. And she starts to have a little bit of an awakening, which is subtle, I would say. And I don't want to ruin the book for anyone because I really want everyone to read it. But I'd love to know from you, like, why nuns?
Great question. When I started writing this book, I had been writing so much fiction about like sad girls who sometimes drank too much and like slept with the wrong people. And I was desperate to write
That's a familiar genre.
Right, a familiar lifestyle. And I was desperate to write about people who were really different from me. I wanted to, see how far fiction could get me in terms of empathy. And when I thought back to the nuns that I had known growing up, nuns seemed to have a lifestyle that was about as far from my own as I could get. And they saw the world so differently from the way that I saw the world. But there was kind of a romance to a nun's life when I thought about it. The idea of living with other like-minded women who, wanted the same things out of life and wanted to spend their time in similar ways. That was really appealing to me at that stage in my life. And it just seemed really beautiful to reflect on the devotion that comes with choosing to spend your life that way. And the more I thought about it, the more, I really wanted to imagine what it was like to navigate the world in that way, being marked as so different from other women because of the habit, but underneath the habit, right, there's a real human being there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Agatha develops some friendships at the school where she works that are interesting, right? I mean, again, I really want to try and not give too much away, and then why did you choose a halfway house and drugs? Like, was there I think there are interesting elements in this book about obviously kind of lifestyle choices, right? And kind of big identity choices. And then also there's a very subtle way that sexuality plays a role. So I'm kind of interested in drugs in general, like why you thought that was an interesting setting, and then how you made choices around how to handle the sexuality, because it's not particularly explicit at all, really, but there's some undercurrent of sexuality thinking, and I wonder how you want to talk about that.
Right. In terms of the halfway house, I would say that it was important for me. At the beginning, I was writing a lot of really lovely scenes in which everyone was happy and the nuns all got along. And loved their lives. But then it was important for something to happen, right? And I wanted to send them somewhere that they would be tested and be able to see if their faith would live up to, all that it claimed to be. And so I thought that putting them in the setting where, they're living with people whose choices they might judge on the surface, would give us the chance to see, just what kind of love they're capable of in that setting, and what kind of compassion, they're able to summon for these people. And then in terms of the sexuality theme,
well, I appreciate you going on, but I want to stop for 1 second and say that what you just said makes me think about the challenge you had, of course, of differentiating the four women, right? And of really giving them, I mean, obviously giving them different personalities, but it's not so simple, right? Because the way you portray them is as kind of this clump in some ways, right? They're kind of, and of course they do start to emerge in different personalities in wonderful ways, but kudos to you, because you did a great job of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to strike a balance between, showing how inseparable they were to each other, and also showing that, there was some individuation in there, and that they weren't all the same. Yeah, I never wanted this to be a coming out book or like a book about repression, because I think that's so often the narrative that people tell about nuns is like sexually repressed, and
yeah, and it's not. I mean, if I remember correctly, you kind of have a hint that maybe Agatha in the end might be interested in her sexuality or in more exploring, but it's just not what the book is about. And I actually really liked the way you handled it. Like it is a cliche. It's also obviously hugely central to who we are as human beings. So it'd be stupid to not have it in there, right? It kind of, it is something you're thinking about and wondering about. I thought you handled it in a very delicate, smart way.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, when I was researching for this book, I talked to one young nun who had a young nun friend who knew that she was a lesbian, but had just decided to do away with that part of herself. And that really inspired so much of, how I treated the theme of sexuality in the book, was like this idea of, negative capability, knowing something, but also choosing to know something else instead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was interested in seeing, how that worked.
Yeah, and are you religious yourself?
No, I grew up Catholic, and I have very fond memories of, my Catholic childhood, but I also am still in some ways undoing some of the deeply ingrained stuff that Catholicism can do to a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't until I was in my senior year of high school that I actually was taught by a nun, but I had been told stories about nuns my whole life and had met and been around many nuns, because my mother's family comes from a very devout Catholic background. And so nuns have always kind of been part of the lore of our family.
Oh, interesting. Where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Chicago, but my mother's family is from Buffalo.
Okay. And how does your family feel about the book?
I'm not sure if any of them have read it. I know.
Tell us more. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, I think my family's been very supportive of my, writerly ambitions. But ultimately, I don't think that their feedback is the feedback that I wanted or needed when I was writing. It was important for me to, write it kind of as much in a vacuum as I could, and then see what came of it. There's a lot of my childhood and a lot of my like family lore in the book. There's a scene, right, in which one nun says, she offers to buy a homeless person a parfait from McDonald's, and that comes from a beloved family member saying, "What the hell is a parfait?" in the middle of a McDonald's. A cherished bit of family lore.
So have you actually tried, tell me if I'm asking too many questions, but have you gone out of your way to have them not read the book? I mean, I would imagine they must be super proud of you. It's a very good book.
Yeah, thank you. I think so. I think maybe they're just not readers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, hopefully I'm sure word will get to them eventually. Maybe when it's in paperback, maybe one day.
Right.
What are you working on next?
I'm working on a totally different book. I, had been working on this book about nuns for 5 years and am like so ready to be done with nuns. And so I'm actually writing about the Postal Service, of all things, another institution that has long fascinated me.
Yeah, timely, so important. The Postal Service is a great idea. I have to say your work, I was trying to remember this earlier and couldn't remember it, and it just came to me. It reminds me a little bit of when I first read Elizabeth McCracken. I no longer love her work as much, I have to say. But when I first read The Giant's House, I was like so charmed. And that's kind of how I felt reading this. I felt really like it was both intellectual and just utterly charming.
Thank you. That's a very high compliment in my book.
Yeah, good. So imagining you trying to take on the postal system is fun, because there are a lot of writers I wouldn't really want to see that. Like, I wouldn't really want to see like Michael Chabon taking on the post office. That sounds kind of exhausting. But I'll be very curious to see what you do with it. That's fun. Will it have female protagonists?
Of course. Who else are there?
I only really read books by women about women, so it's easier for me.
Same. Yeah.
Okay, good. So who else do you like to read?
Oh, right now I'm reading The Life of the Mind by Christine Smallwood, and I absolutely love it. It's so funny, and there's so many good, the protagonist is an adjunct professor, and there are all these scenes in which she's bewildered by her students, and
how fun. I've never heard of it. Christine Smallwood, The Life of the Mind. Okay,
it's so good.
Great. I've been in a good fiction thing lately. I feel like I've been, you're young. How old are you?
30.
30. Nice. You go through phases where like you read a lot of fiction, and then phases where for some reason I've gone through whole like 5-year spans in my life where I've read more nonfiction, but I'm back in a big fiction phase, and it's.
What are you reading now?
Well, I just read, it's actually holding up my laptop, otherwise I'd show you, the Dana Spiotta book, Wayward,
Mm.
which Knopf just came out with. Here it is, which is quite good, really good, I thought. And the next book I want to read, everything's pink, including your book, is I want to read Intimacies, the Katie Kitamura.
Yes, that's next on my stack.
Yeah, that looks really, really good. And I just love a good hardcover book, you know, they're just so beautiful. So for everyone who's listening again, we're talking to Claire Luchette, who's just published this first book, Agatha of Little Neon, a very charming kind of indie literary, smart, funny novel that just came out from FSG today. And I really want everyone to buy it. I'm going to really keep recommending. Honestly, I mean, I don't usually say this, really. You should listen to my podcast. This is like, I think, one of my favorite books this year. Like, I really love this book. I thought it was really
high praise. Thank you.
So
Thank
I really want people to read it. And I'm trying to think who, I feel like Emily Mortimer should option the film rights or someone. I could totally see, like, I'm trying to think who should do it. Because I think it would actually be a good movie. Like, you have that drama of what happens at the halfway house, and of course the implicit drama at the end. Nuns also remind me a little bit of it's a little bit like reading about Hasidic Jews or something. Like, it reminds me also of, I don't know if you ever read, there was a great book that I read when I was even younger than you called The Romance Reader by Pearl Abraham. She went on to have like a bit of a literary career, but I think her best, I shouldn't say that to you, it's going to scare you, but I think her best book was The Romance Reader. But anyway, it was a book about a Hasidic woman who leaves the Hasidic community. And it was a little darker than your book, but it had some elements also of that kind of literary unusual. And I don't know, I've always been kind of fascinated by the Hasidic community too. And and I don't think I'd ever read a book about nuns before, actually, before I read your book.
Yeah, it's a strange, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because Biden is president and Biden is a Catholic, but all of a sudden nuns are everywhere we look.
Oh, shoot. I wish I was doing this interview from my apartment in Brooklyn. I just bought this hilarious, I'll send you a picture of it, this hilarious nun doll at a thrift shop. I did post it on my Instagram at some point. I'm going to tag you. I may have even tagged you at the time because it was really funny. I think I bought it after I read your galley. And so now I have it sitting on my desk in Brooklyn. It's really very funny.
Incredible.
I love dolls. Well, Claire, I'm going to let you go since you're sick with COVID. But you look great, and get healthy soon. Yes. And thank you for talking to me. I was very excited to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's such a privilege and a pleasure to be read by someone so smart with such good taste.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will be like totally spreading the word, and excited for your next book. I hope I talk to you in 3 years when you're publishing a book on post office.
Sounds great. 3 sounds like a totally manageable number of years.
Who's your agent, by the way?
Julie Bear.
Oh, see, you have a genius agent. You're tough. You're blessed. Everything's going to be great. All right, in 3 years, we'll talk to you about your next book.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks so much.